Good morning and welcome to Valley News Now. I'm Adam Shalafu. Last night we had the vice presidential debates, and tonight we're going to talk to our D.C. correspondent, Ashanti Ford. Ashanti, thank you so much joining us virtually this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you. Let's jump right into it. One of the first things that I noticed during the debate was there was a little bit more of a willingness to work across the aisles. There were times when clearly both candidates wanted the same thing. Do you think this provides some hope for some better functioning bipartisanship for the American people?
Well, I agree. It was definitely a different tone than I think we expected. And I agree on them just kind of coming together on a number of things like gun control, right? That was one of them, gun reform, getting the guns off the streets. While still respecting responsible gun owners. That definitely was brought up. It seemed that both of them were on the same page with that. The housing crisis, right, was also something that they both addressed and seemed to be on the same page with. It was definitely a respectful civil debate. And again, we haven't really seen anything like that in a while. They focused on policies as opposed to attacking each other. They even, again, had some points that they agreed on. I would say Minnesota Governor Tim Walz took a little while to warm up. He kind of told VP Harris when he was first selected to be her running mate that he was not the best debater. Senator J.D. Vance, that's Mr. Trump's running mate, I feel that there were some opportunities where he could have kind of cleared the air on a few things. He didn't really do that. He kind of played it safe. They both really played it safe about questions about the war happening in the Middle East right now, questions about abortion, and questions about the January 6th attack on the Capitol. But overall, they did cover quite a bit of policy last night.
And obviously there's a lot of dividing issues as well. And so even though there was some civility, there certainly was points when they were on the attack. Do you think that there was any key battleground won or perhaps lost by either candidate in the debate?
You know, it's hard to say. CNN does have an instant poll, and I'll tell you what that said here in a second, but it's hard to say. You know, it just happened last night, and there's a great deal of people that maybe weren't even tuned into the debate, right? As opposed to the presidential debate that was averaged at about 61 million in viewership. So, you know, a lot of people were interested in last night because it kind of served as a closing argument for why voters should choose either candidate, but it's going to be hard to tell if it really had a dent in the polls as of right now. Maybe a week or so, but in terms of that instant poll, this was from CNN, and I actually checked it out right before I stepped in the studio, and it said that registered voters who did tune in last night kind of felt Harris's running mate, Governor Tim Walz, was more in touch with their vision for America, more poised. However, they said that J.D. Vance did a better job defending his running mate, which is former President Donald Trump. But I think in terms of, you know, if we want to talk about mistakes or how they played it safe, you know, right off the bat, both of them were asked about their stance and their thoughts on the bombing in Iran. Neither of them were really willing to commit to any concrete action. It also wasn't a good look, again, for Vance to completely kind of skate over the question about the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Like I was saying, you know, and I have been saying all week, this was the last debate before the November election and an opportunity for them to clean up any mess that the presidential debate left behind. And I'm not quite sure they did that. Was the debate civil? Yes. Was it effective? I'm not so sure.
That's a very interesting point there. Now, both candidates kind of had to survive a few questions, if you will. There was the very controversial Tiananmen Square question, and then Vance being asked about some of the things he said that were against Trump back in 2020. How do you think it's even smart or the gamesmanship of surviving those questions, especially Vance publicly going against Trump, and now he's right there at his right hand?
Well, you know, that was something that he received a lot of criticism for from the very beginning, I would say, since he was announced as the running mate. And I think that was a big reason that people were shocked that J.D. Vance was announced as his running mate because he had been so critical of him in the past. But hey, you know, that might have just been something that the former president did on purpose to kind of get that other demographic in. And I think, again, last night, they really played it safe, in my opinion. These two running mates are two guys that I have been following very closely since they were announced as running mates. So all of these states that they visit on these campaigning efforts, I'm listening to all of their speeches, and typically, you know, they're pretty fiery. I would say they're pretty passionate about how they feel about policy, where they stand on a number of different things that affects all of us, economy being one of them, abortion being another, foreign policy. But I just didn't really see those fireworks last night. I feel like they honestly played it pretty safe. So let's see if that was good enough for the American people when it comes to the November election.
That's another good point there. Now, we're just about 5 weeks away now from an election that, every election's historic, but you're either going to have a president returning to the office after a 4-year break or the first female president in the history of our nation. And so, obviously, there's a lot to be laid out still, but do you think either one comes away with any sort of edge, not just after this debate last night, but the presidential debates as well?
It's hard to say. I will say, if we're going back to the presidential debate with former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, there were a lot of fireworks on that stage. And, as toxic as it might sound, that's what the American voter wants to see. They want to see folks passionate and fighting for what they believe in. Now, I will say, there were also a lot of people that were disappointed with some of the answers, or rather lack thereof, during that presidential debate. And again, last night's VP debate was kind of an opportunity for their running mates to clear that up, to answer any questions that voters felt like they still had after listening to former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris in their debate. Like, for example, former President Donald Trump made a comment about Haitians eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio, but officials in Springfield, Ohio immediately came out and said that that wasn't true. Last night, Vance was kind of put on the spot with that, and he kind of skated over his answer, where he could have used it as an opportunity to shine some light or to clean that up. Same thing on the other end with Walz, when he was asked, do you support abortion at 8 or 9 months? I don't know if he really directly answered that. So again, last night could have served as a cleanup, and maybe in some instances they did kind of exercise that opportunity, but overall I think these two guys really played it safe. So let's see. Let's see if it actually has an impact in the polls come November.
Now, when people are trying to make their decision, I think one of the challenges, not just of this election, but in the modern landscape of politics, is trying to find correct information. People are saying these things as facts, and they contradict each other. It happened several times throughout last night, and a perfect example is the economy. Both sides are saying this person's destroying the economy. No, this person's destroying the economy. How do American voters navigate the modern landscape and find accurate information?
Research. Everyone needs to become a mini journalist in their own right. Research. Because, this is going on both sides, right? There's flip-flopping going on both sides. Some people might say on VP Harris's side, she's flip-flopped about fracking and where she stands with that. Some may say that former President Donald Trump, who had a very big part in overturning Roe versus Wade, which gave women the right to choose what they wanted to do with their body as it relates to abortion, some say that he has flip-flopped on that and a number of other things. So it's the responsibility of the voter, the registered voter, to first register to vote, show up to the polls, but do your research. And then we also have to keep in mind, this is campaigning season, right? And these folks, regardless of what they want to happen, it's not guaranteed. I'll give you an example. President Biden, I remember when he was campaigning, and I specifically remembered when he said he was going to go after all student loans. And I remember that because I got pretty excited. I got student loans myself that I would love to see wiped out. But as he's kind of exiting the White House, a lot of folks still have their student loans to deal with. That he wasn't able to actually get through something as hard as he tried. He wasn't able to actually push that through. So people have to keep that in mind as well. So one, do your research. That's one way to cut through that drama. And two, understand that these folks are trying to get into the Oval Office, which is going to take some promises that they may or may not be able to fulfill.
Well, Ashanti, my last question for you here is, what do you think, in your opinion, was just the most important thing that happened last night?
I really liked, even though, for a great deal of people, it may have seemed that it was boring because we're just used to seeing more fireworks, more animosity on that debate stage. I actually had a certain rather level of appreciation and respect for the calmness of it all. I could appreciate that it seemed that they really tried to stick to the facts, and I really appreciated that they kind of had some of the same thoughts when it came to some important things that we've been discussing for years, things like gun reform. Right? School shootings, unfortunately, are at an all time high. Back in the day, it was rare for there to be a school shooting, right? Now it's not so rare. So I could appreciate that, they were kind of on the same page with that. I can also appreciate that they were on the same page with the housing crisis, right? Because there are millions of people who are having issues with that. The National Housing Coalition reports that there's a 7.3 million unit shortage for affordable houses. That's huge. That's a record number. So I think for me, I appreciated that for once we saw the politics kind of put to the side and both of them kind of speak on the needs of the American people.
Absolutely. Well said, Ashanti. And it's just a matter of addressing issues that affect us all, Democrat, Republican, or moderate. Thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great afternoon. And thank you, everyone who's watching us online right now. And Ashanti, once again, thanks again. Have a great day, and thank you all for watching on Valley News Now. We'll see you next time.